Hey everybody, how are y'all doing? Happy Monday. Are you ready for the next session on Kubernetes with Michael? Let me know. Just checking that we are working across all of our channels. Looks like it. Okay. So before we bring Michael in, I just want to talk to you all really quickly about the Cloud Lunch and Learn Teams Ideathon that's happening on the 24th of October. If you haven't checked out the details of our Ideathon yet, go to the Cloud Lunch and Learn website /Ideathon to watch a short video about the problem that we will be looking to solve. So we will be looking to help Evelyn with her IoT app solution aimed at helping and supporting patients with dementia. So the Ideathon, as opposed to a hackathon, we're not just looking for developers, we're looking for everyone, technical and non-technical people to help solve this solution. We've got loads of people signed up already. It's looking really great, actually. We're definitely going to have about 4 or 5 teams. What we are in need of, so we've met our goal in getting a broad range of people, which is brilliant. That's exactly what we wanted to do. What we are lacking in a little bit is technical experts. So guys, I know that I said we need everyone, not just technical people, but we all know we absolutely do need you technical experts. So if you're an Azure architect, Azure engineer, if you're an IoT specialist, anybody really, we really need you guys involved on the Ideathon on the 24th of October, because we want to make sure that all of our teams have that technical support and someone there with that knowledge, and it's really crucial. So if you haven't looked already and if you haven't signed up, please do. The registrations close on the 16th of October, so that's this Friday. So hurry. Okay, I'm going to bring Michael in right now. We've been talking about Michael's beard and my hair on Twitter, which I know is not the content that you're here for, but let's bring him on anyway. Hey, Michael. Oh, you're on mute.
There we go. Is that better?
Yes.
Perfect.
Yes, we can hear you.
How are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Good. Can't complain. It's Monday, so.
It's Monday.
You know, it's Monday.
It's Monday.
Yep,
we're talking about Kubernetes. What more could you want from?
I know, right? There you go.
What more could you want? So you've grown your beard over lockdown. Is that what we're saying? And now you're unsure about what to do with it?
Yeah, I'm unsure. It's kind of in this like weird state right now where it's like a little stringy looking. It needs to get a little bit longer, so it's a little bit thicker. But you know, hopefully it'll start to look a little bit better soon. But yeah, I just like stopped shaving because I couldn't go to the barber or anything during lockdown. You know. And then when I finally was able to go back to the barber, he's like, "What do you want to do with the beard?" I'm like, "I don't know. We could just keep it and kind of see what happens," because I'm so used to it. And at least I don't have to shave every day, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that is pretty cool. My little brother tends to go through these phases with his beard also. Sometimes it goes wild, other times he likes to get a nice trim. So yeah, but when you can't get access to the barbers. Exactly. And I've also, like, 2020 has got me reflecting and all sorts and thinking about big life changes, and I'm thinking maybe just a change in hair color would be the safest instead of, you know.
Yeah, why not?
I used to change my hair all the time, and I've not changed it in so long, and I'm like, maybe we just need, you know, 2020 new hairstyle. Right, I'm going to stop chatting, and we're going to let you take over and talk to us about Kubernetes. So let me just get set up, and I'll leave you to it. I'll be in the chats, everyone. So if you've got questions, let me know. I can always jump in. We can have some time at the end as well to discuss, like we did last Monday. So I will leave you to it.
All right, let me just, yep, there we go, perfect. All righty. So we'll start off with a little PowerPoint, kind of like we did last week, and then we'll get into the good stuff, all the demos and all that. So
Yes, Michael, I forgot about this. I was getting too excited talking about beards and hairstyles. Everybody, please scan the QR code on your screen or go to the link in the slide. I will post that link in the chat. By registering at this link, you will get access to free learning materials from Microsoft relevant to this session. But also, it really helps us track engagement. Microsoft are one of our sponsors, so it really helps us track engagement to these sessions. So if you could do that, it would be much appreciated.
Cool, perfect. All right, so let's jump right in. So this week we're going to be talking about manifests, specifically Kubernetes manifests. You might have, it's pretty much the only name I think that everybody typically uses from a Kubernetes perspective. Or you might see them called maybe like YAML templates or something like that. But essentially, what is the Kubernetes manifest? So the Kubernetes manifest is the code for the code. So what's going to happen is you're going to have a packaged application. It's going to be in a Docker image. So that's the application portion, or maybe it's some type of infrastructure as code or some automation, like anything. It could be anything. So you're going to have that Docker image. Now, once you have that Docker image, you obviously need a way to get it to Kubernetes. And that's going to be through the Kubernetes manifest, which is written in YAML. And we're going to see a full demo on like how to actually deploy a Kubernetes manifest today. But when you think about Kubernetes manifest, just think the code for the code that you have to define to show what your application is supposed to look like, and then where it's going to be deployed to. So what is a Kubernetes manifest? Well, it's a way to define the environment, like what the environment looks like. It allows you to do CRUD operations. So you have creations, you have replacements, you have updates, you have deletions, modifications, all of that stuff. So you could pretty much do all of that inside of your Kubernetes manifest. In terms of the deletion, you're not going to see it too much. You're going to see more of people creating and updating. So what makes up a manifest? Well, there are a bunch of different portions of a manifest, which we'll see, but pretty much the primaries are: one, you have a metadata name. So once you deploy your application, you give it a name. You give that deployment a name, and that name is going to be essentially your metadata name. So we're going to just be deploying a light that Nginx application today. So that's going to be the name. The name could be like Nginx deployment, for example. And then you have labels. So think of labels like key value pairs. So you know how when you're creating something in Azure and you can give it a tag, that tag could be like the key could be environment and then the value could be dev. Same exact thing. That's exactly what labels are. So then you have the configuration specifically for the container. So what Docker image you're using, if you're using any volume mounts, or just, like a hard disk, for example, that you want to connect to the container, if you want some type of persistent storage, what port. So let's say the application needs to listen on port 8080, that you would be exposing that in the manifest as well. And then pretty much what you can do in this manifest is you can do deployments. You can do deployment pods. You could do deployment services. There's a bunch of different things that you can do. Now, last week, we went over those key differences between like what a deployment is and what a pod is. So remember, with your deployment, that's what you want from a production level. You never want to use a pod at a production level because you miss out on all the benefits like self-healing, for example. So what happens when a manifest is deployed? So this is just a little diagram here, and you can see that, you have this deployment manifest or the Kubernetes manifest or the YAML template, whatever you want to call it. You push it up, it gets deployed, you apply it. The Kubernetes cluster says, okay, yep, this is good. There's no rollbacks, there's no errors happening during the deployment. It gets into Kubernetes, and then it goes out to those worker nodes, and those worker nodes start up the application. So just a few bullet points here. Kubernetes has the ability to manage the state of the application, meaning if anything changes and the change isn't in the manifest, Kubernetes will attempt to revert the change. So let's say you have a manifest, and this manifest is for a Nginx deployment, and you have port 8080. For whatever reason, let's just say somebody or another application or another service or anything goes into the deployment, because this is something that you can do. You can edit the deployments manually. And somebody goes in and changes the port from 8080 to 8081. Obviously, the application cannot listen on port 8081. So what the Kubernetes Manifest is going to do is it's going to constantly be checking in. There's like a constant heartbeat between the deployment and the manifest. And what's happening is it's checking, okay, is all of this the same? Anytime that it is not the same, anytime that the manifest sees something different in the deployment, it's going to try to revert it back. It wants to keep that state as much as possible. And you want to as well. That's why you want to define your application inside of a Kubernetes manifest, or that's why you want to, even define your application in like Terraform, for example, or Ansible or something. The reason why you use these types of tools is because you want that state. You want that desired state of what the application is supposed to look like ultimately. The next thing is, it's all about keeping the state pure, pretty much what I just said. The state is what the application is supposed to look like, aka the layouts of the resources you define in the configuration. So just keep that in your mind. The layouts of the resources you define in the configuration. And those resources are whatever you're deploying that Nginx application, for example. So the manifest definition stays with the deployment. Now, what does this mean? It means that regardless of if the pods get updated, if they get deleted, if they get recreated, anything, that manifest is always with the deployment. It never ventures off to another deployment or something like that. When you create that deployment with a manifest, that manifest configuration, that state is always with the application or with the deployment. And we're going to also see that as well in this demo. And with that is it for PowerPoints, short and sweet. The one thing that I did want to bring up actually really quick before I forget is declarative. So if you're not familiar with declarative, essentially in programming, you'll hear declarative and imperative. So imperative programming, you essentially tell the compiler what you want to happen step by step. Think about it like a function, almost like an algorithm, where you're like, okay, here's my function. I want it to do this, 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 and this. Those are your steps. And then you also have declarative programming, where you essentially write code that describes what you want it to look like, but not necessarily how to get it. So those manifests, those are like you're describing what you want it to look like. Just in case people didn't know what that meant. So what I'm going to do now is just going to pop in a little documentation that I wrote here. Okay, cool. So I actually wrote all this out. I have it on another screen just so you guys didn't have to watch me type. So I'm going to do a new file here. I'm in VS Code, of course. Let me just zoom in a little bit. All right. So I'm going to copy over a manifest that I have. You know what? Actually, I'm not going to copy it over. I'm going to type it out so we can go through what each means. So I'm just going to save this. I'm going to save this to my desktop. Say Nginx YAML. Okay, so first thing that we're going to do is the API version. Now, the API version is what version of the deployment or what version of the manifest you're using to interact with Kubernetes. Second is the kind, and the kind, of course, is that deployment or that pod or that service, whatever type of manifest you're using. And then you have some metadata, and that metadata can be, for example, the name. So we could do Nginx deploy. Sorry, I don't think you guys can see, but my puppy is right underneath me right now. So apologies if I'm typing funny. And then we have the spec, and the spec is essentially what those labels are. So we're going to type in, I apologize. Give me 1 second. Apologies. Go. Okay. So then we have the selector, and the selector is going to essentially be where we can start setting up those labels. So I'm going to do my match labels here, and then we can start setting up these labels. So for example, we could do environment, and we can say dev. Now, this is going to be very, very important for, especially if you have multiple different types of deployments. So the selector, you can actually use this to select which node the application should go on. So for example, let's say you have 3 worker nodes and you have 1 Kubernetes cluster and you want, I don't know, all of the web applications to go on one node, for example, you can use these selectors and these labels to be able to do that. So then what we're going to do is we're going to go back here and we're going to start setting up our replicas. Now remember, your replicas are how many different applications of the same application you want. So for example, let's say I have this Nginx web server that I want to spin up, and I obviously don't want to just have one. Like I want to have some sort of like not only failover, but like high availability almost. So I could say, for example, I want 4 replicas. I want 4 of the same application running. And then we have the template, and the template is just going to be, again, this Nginx, or I'm sorry, this Kubernetes Manifest. That's our template. So again, we're going to specify our metadata. We're going to specify our labels, and then our label is going to be environment dev, all right? So now we can start specifying the spec. So the spec is going to be what we want our container to look like. So for example, our name, we're going to name it Nginx deploy. We're going to go to image. So the image is going to be, what Nginx image we want to actually use from Docker Hub, for example. So we'll do Nginx latest. Now, latest always means the newest version of the application that you're using, or the newest version of the Docker image that you're using, rather. Okay, and then we can specify our ports here, for example, and we can say container port equals port 80. Okay, so this is our Kubernetes manifest. Let me see what's yelling at me. No, that's fine. I think it's just a bug in VS Code. Okay, so we have our manifest, and now we're essentially ready to deploy this manifest. So the first thing that I'm going to have to do, of course, like always, is I need to ensure that my current context, just like we saw last week, my current context is the Kubernetes or AKS cluster that I want to use to actually deploy my manifest in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the AZ AKS command. And what that's going to do is that's going to allow us to get the credentials based on the Kubernetes cluster that I want to use and where the resource group is. So we have name, demo ACR, Michael Levan, and then my resource group name. So I'm going to run this. And now what this is going to do is this is going to set my context for me. And as we can see, my context is right here. We can go ahead and we can take a look at that. So if I scroll up through all of this, we can see that here's my cluster name. And we can also see my current context. So my current context is the demo ACR Michael Levan. All right, so perfect. And again, your configs, your Kubernetes configs for your context and all the different type of clusters that you'll be using, you can always go to that kube config. The default location is always under your user profile, and then the directory .kube. And then you can see the config in there. And you can also modify the config, but you don't really ever want to do that unless like you really have to. So now what we can do is we can actually deploy our Kubernetes configuration. So I'm going to go to CD desktop, right? And then I'm going to do kubectl. This is, that standard Kubernetes CLI that we're using. So this is how we interact with the Kubernetes cluster via APIs. So I'm going to use kubectl, and I'm going to do apply -f. And what this essentially does is it says, look at the Kubernetes manifest that I'm passing in at runtime. And I'm going to say nginx.yaml. Right, we're going to click apply here. Okay, and we do have an error. So the error is unknown metadata in IOK's API deployment. Okay, so the reason that you can see this is it essentially means that it's missing that template configuration. So you're missing a required field template. And I did want to bring this up specifically because you may run into this quite a bit. So what happens is when you switch between different API versions, or you switch between like different kinds. So for example, let's say you use like a kind of pod, or a kind deployment or something like that, or a kind service, depending on what they look like, or what you're using, they could differ in terms of what they're essentially supposed to be looking like. So what I'm going to do is go back here. We have our spec, we have our selector. Let me just copy this in. Right. So the only thing that actually changed was the placement of our template. So you could have, again, just make sure that whatever kind you're using, like deployment or pod or service, you'll see a few other ones on there like daemon sets and stuff like that. Make sure that you're using the same type of template that you're supposed to be using for that kind, because it can vary. Go back to my terminal here. We're going to clear this out, do kubectl apply, and as we can see now, our Kubernetes configuration is successful here. And we can run kubectl get deployments. Okay. Now we see that we have 2 ready and 2 available. So what does that actually mean? Well, as you can see, we have 2 replicas, but let's change this back to 4, kind of like we had before, and we'll change this deployment again a little bit, and we'll go to latest, and we'll say nginx deploy and nginx deploy. All right. So let's go back here. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually not delete anything. I'm just going to run and apply again. So before I do that, let's see what happens when we run create. So we can see that this has automatically been created again for us, and we can run kubectl get deployment. Okay. So as we can see, we now have 2 different types of deployments. So why did that happen? Well, the reason why that happened was because we ran a create on our new deployment. But if we run, let's say we change this to 6, up the terminal again, and we run apply. Okay. So warning, kubectl apply should be used on resources created by either kubectl create or kubectl apply. That's fine. kubectl get deployments. Okay. So notice what happened here. A new one didn't get created again. Instead, we went from 4 to 6. So when you kubectl create, it goes net new. When you do kubectl apply, it updates the existing. Okay, so now what we can do is we can just kubectl delete deployment, and we'll say nginx deployment, put our screen, kubectl deployments. Okay, so now we have that one deployment left. Now we can actually start to see what is involved in these deployments. So the first thing that we can run is kubectl get pods. Remember, we have 6. We specified our replicas of 6, which means we're going to have 6 different pods running, which is all running that same Kubernetes nginx application. So we can clear that. And now let's do kubectl describe deployments, nginx deployment. All right, so let's maximize this a bit. So remember how I said that Kubernetes manifest always stays with your application? Well, as we can see here, this is what we have defined declaratively inside of our nginx manifest. So we can see things like the name, the namespace, the creation, any type of annotations. So for example, this is like all of the stuff that we set up in our Kubernetes manifest, right? We see the different replicas that we have. We see any type of strategy type that we have. We have the image name, the port, all of that, what the state is. So if it's in, if it's in an error state, it'll let us know. But we can see that the status is true, which means it's good to go. So now what I want to do is I want to try the same thing, except on pods. kubectl and pods. I'll just pick one of these, for example, do kubectl describe pod. Okay. So as you can see, this gives us a little bit more information. And why is that? Well, when you describe the deployment, remember the only thing that the deployment is a essentially not a bucket, but let's see, how can I put it? It's just essentially I don't want to say container because I don't want to confuse from like a Docker container, but it's essentially a container of what your applications are. Just think of it like you're putting a bunch of applications inside of a bucket. It's really what your deployment is. But then when you describe the pod itself, that's a little bit different because this is actually like fully describing what your application looks like. So we see way more information here. We see things like labels, the statuses. We can even see the IP address of the pod itself. We can see the container ID, the image name, the port, it's running or not, and if anything is scheduled, any conditions, any volumes that are used, even any like quality of service stuff that's being used. And then of course, every single event that happens inside of the pod, we can also see here. And with that, that is the end of the demo. And if it's okay with Lisa, we could open it up for questions.
Hey, yes, we can open it up for questions. Also, Michael, actually, we have a different QR code with a different link for this session. My bad. I just sent it to you. I just sent it to you in Slack, but I have put the correct link in the chat across all our channels. So
let me just pull up Slack here really quick.
Thanks. But I've put the link in the chat for across all the channels. So we don't have any questions in the chat. Does anyone have any questions they'd like to ask relevant to the session or to Kubernetes in general?
Sure. Yeah. I went through I tried to jam pack it in as much as possible. I went through a lot of different topics today. So if there is any confusion or if I need to clarify anything, please let me know because I know that this session was a lot all at once.
We'll just hang around for a minute or two and see if anyone's got any questions before we close off. Zach is about to start knocking things off the windowsill and start playing with the blinds. Good timing. Okay, just going to check through the channels and let's just see.
My dog has been extra needy today for some reason. I'm like, she just literally came right underneath me and started barking because she wanted me to pet her.
I feel like that's what happens in autumn and winter. I think everyone gets needy. Pets and everyone need attention. It's dark and it's cold. I could actually make some jokes there on this time of year, but I'll keep them to myself. So can't see any questions in the chat. So either, Michael, you did an amazing job, which I think it will be.
Yeah, explained it very, very well.
Yeah. Or so people just don't have any questions. But if you do have any questions, if you're going to watch this session back from a recorded version, and you have any questions, then please do just reach out to Michael. You can see his Twitter handle on your screen. And with that, I'm just going to do a little bit of a roundup. So if you're not following us at Cloud Lunch and Learn on our channels, please do so. You can find us on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, all the places. So please make sure you're following us and share with your friends. If you like this session, please give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel and all our other channels. And very quickly, just to round it up, I will say that the registrations close for the Ideathon this Friday, 16th of October. We've got a great bunch of people for the teams. The Ideathon's happening on the 24th of October. We're looking to solve an IoT solution for an app aimed at supporting and helping those with dementia. So it's a real life problem, real opportunity to use your knowledge, to get involved, to solve a real life problem and help people out. We are actually looking for more technical experts to make sure that the teams that we have on the day have that technical expertise and support and knowledge whilst designing a solution. So as opposed to a hackathon, this is an ideathon. We've brought lots of different types of people together, and it's going to be about designing the solution rather than actually developing it there and then. So it's going to be about designing the solution. We'll be given a problem statement, and then it'll be up to the teams to come up with a solution. So if you are a technical expert, IoT specialist, etc., please take a look at our website, cloudlunchandlearn/ideathon, and sign up for some fun and also helping out patients with dementia and solving a real life problem. What more could you want to do in lockdown, really? Oh,
there it goes.
Yeah. And with that, I think we will call it a day, night. Yeah, because I think he's about to get wild. And thanks everyone for joining. Thanks, Michael, again for an awesome session.
Sure. Thank you for having me. Take care.
See y'all later. Bye.